Hello, my name's Steve Wells. You know, looking into the future, exploring the horizon can be quite daunting. It's full of uncertainty, full of complexity. There are lots and lots of data points. So, what do we do about that? As a futurist, I have a keen eye for trends, for changes that seem to be emerging into the future, emerging technologies, new ways of thinking about the economy. But there's so much information. What do we do with it? What do I do with it? I'm used to collecting pieces of information to support horizon scanning exercise, preparing for presentations or speeches, and even conducting the podcasts in the Informing Choices mini pod. The problem is, all that data, all that information is in very disparate places. So, how do I bring it all together? That was a challenge that I had. I started using FIBRES. Now, FIBRES is an online platform that allows you to organize and analyze your futures data. It helps you create a trend radar. It helps you create networks of linked findings that are linked through artificial intelligence. But one of the really interesting things about using the application is it's actually changed the way I think about collecting and collating information. It's encouraged me to do that on a more continuous basis, follow the idea of continuous foresight. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how I do that, how I use collective foresight as an idea and the FIBRES platform to collect the information I find relevant to me. So this is the FIBRES application, and the start point for using FIBRES are the findings. The findings might be signal clusters, trends, as you can see on the heading of a number of the items on this page. But basically, there are a range of different types of observations that you can build findings around. So if we look at just one of these as an example, let's look at autonomous cargo aircraft. The system allows us to, first of all, name the finding. It then asks for a description. So there's some degree of information that describes that particular finding. What we can also do, as you can see over here on the right-hand side, is apply some tags. What we can then do is we can position the finding on the radar. So on this particular case, it's my reinventing the future radar. I'm then able to determine the peak impact. For this one, I've suggested long-term, but it could be medium or short-term. I've also identified it as a high impact. Again, that could be medium or it could be low. And here I'm able to identify the categories. So this is actually putting it against a particular category on the radar. So this particular one, autonomous cargo aircraft, I'm going to put into technology and scientific. So that's actually positioned the finding onto the radar, which we'll look at in a second. We can then identify the uncertainty associated with that finding, and this one I've decided is moderate. I could say it was expected, I could say it was low, or I could say it was high uncertainty. Now, this is the really interesting piece as well, because you can see that there are a number of other linked findings that I've linked to the autonomous cargo aircraft finding. Now, what the system actually does, it offers me a selection of potential links that are identified by the underlying AI application. And this is displayed to me as AI picks. So I can look at those AI picks and decide which ones I want to specifically connect to the finding that I've identified, autonomous cargo aircraft. So let's now look at the trend radar itself. So if we click on radar, you can see that the radar is displayed. It's displayed with the categories. I'm using a steeple framework to help me organize my findings. And you can see that because I've started looking at an autonomous aircraft, that's the finding that's identified here in a pop-up. If I close that down, you might have noticed that the finding here that's displayed on the actual radar went back to green from being highlighted in orange. So I can zoom in to these findings, and I can access those findings, the detail of those findings, from the trend radar. So we were looking at autonomous cargo aircraft. I can click on it, and then I can look at the full details of the finding as before. Now, I mentioned the ability to create networks of findings. And whilst the radar is one view, which has identified all of the findings in the categories that they're assigned to, together with whether it's near term, medium term, mid-term, or long term. But what these connections do that start off being proposed by the underlying AI is create a network for me. So this network features all of the findings that I've identified and the connections between them. So back here on the home page, we can see the findings that we've identified. There's another view of the findings simply by clicking on the findings option on the menu. Now, we can see here that we have all the findings again listed just in a slightly different way. There are search functions available, but what I want to do is particularly focus on autonomous cargo aircraft, our finding of interest, and look at that in the network view. So we click on the finding again. We have the name, the description, and the other details we've already entered into the system. This time, if we click on the network option on the main menu, then what we find is over here on the right-hand side, we have the details of the finding we've identified. But then if we just move these over, then what we can see highlighted in orange are the connections that we've made with the help of the AI application to autonomous cargo aircraft. And by hovering over each of those connections, we see that aviation innovation, strategic trends in aviation, technological bursts of possibility, and industrial and technological revolution are the connected findings that we've linked to autonomous cargo aircraft. Now, if we wanted to explore more of the both direct and indirect connections, we just click on one of the existing connections. We've clicked on aviation innovation, and you can see that the network has changed. The valid connections we now have are a different selection. So connected with aviation innovation are hybrid electric passenger planes, strategic trends in aviation, autonomous cargo aircraft, which is of course where we started, industrial and technological revolution, and technological bursts of possibility. So with this approach, we can see the connections between the different findings that we've identified. And here we are back at the home page. For me, this is very intuitive, it's straightforward to use, and by using these different functions, by looking at the trend radar or by looking at the network of connected findings, it just helps us consider new ideas. It helps us generate new insights. So that's how I use FIBRES to organize my findings, organize my foresight data. Feel free to look at my trend radar, follow the link in the video description. Alternatively, you can look at fibresonline.com to find out more information about the platform. Personally, I find it really intuitive to use, and it helps me organize my information in a way that makes it easily accessible.